Today is Friday, August 20th, 2021, which means it's Derelict Friday. Hello, fiendlings, how the hell are you? Well, I got the edits back from Severed, and I spent a long time going through the 3,000 plus changes. Trust me, most of them were formatting or hyphen disagreement. Apparently, I need to go back to school. Last night at midnight, I finally called it good, exported the file, and now I have the wonderful moment where I actually have to send the email with the new doc. It's been many years since I took this step, and I can't help but admit that it's terrifying. What did I forget? What did the editors, the betas, the podcast listeners, the patrons, what did we all miss that is going to make this book suck? In truth, I could spend another month looking at this manuscript, rewriting bits and pieces, and send it back for another round of edits, but it won't make the book better. The book is the book. And as much anxiety as I have about it going into the world, it's much, much worse to hold on to it. As the saying goes, art is never finished, only abandoned. I have to abandon the last book in the Derelict Saga and move the fuck on. I'm still waiting on the cover art for the trade paperback and ebook, but I imagine those will show up shortly after I get the manuscript to Severed. It's possible this book will be out before the end of the month. 5 years of my life spent on this series, and now it's finally going to end. I can't even explain what that feels like. Well, enough of my personal foibles and childish fears. Let's get you some more story. Be safe, have a great week, and we'll talk again real soon. Here's episode 37 of Derelict, Trident. Chapter 60. The moment he saw the flashes from her suit lights, Talby gently pushed the craft in her direction, the gunner's canopy opening behind him. Copenhaver got the hint without him having to say a word. She jetted to the canopy and pulled herself inside. "Hello, Private," Talby said. "Good to see you."
"Hi, sir,"
she said. His hollow board indicated both the canopy and his gunner were secured.
"Excuse me, sir, what is this thing?"
He couldn't help but grin. "This is the SV Null, and you better learn how to use that gun fast. We're going to have an extremely target-rich environment." There was a pause.
"Sir, my block doesn't work with this device."
"No," Talby said, "but your suit will interface with it just fine." Another pause.
Got it, sir.
She broke off. Talby touched the thrusters and brought the craft into a negative vector toward the hangar base. He'd given Dunn and Carbonaro enough time to reach it, and now he could move freely.
"Who made this, sir?"
She sounded incredulous. He knew how she felt. "Same sentience that sent us to Mira," Talby said. Another SV Null waited on the other side of Black's hangar, its lights dimmed to near nothing.
"Sir, can we trust—"
"Private," Talby said, fighting the urge to sigh. "I don't have the full story yet, but let's put it this way. They seem to have a vested interest in our survival. More importantly, we don't have a choice." Copenhaver responded faster than he thought she would.
"Aye, sir."
"Any questions beyond that one?"
"No, sir. Cannons primed. Chaff dispensers are full. Fuel at 99%. Gravitic.
She pronounced the word hesitantly.
Thrusters and engines online and idling. We are green."
"Yes, we are," Talby said. He heard the sound of her opening her mouth to ask a question, followed by the click of teeth. "What is it, Private?"
"Have you had communications with the corporal, sir?"
"No, there's been no comms with them. They are MIA." Another pause.
"Aye, sir."
Talby felt it chill. "What about Gunny?" Talby asked. "Do you know if he's—"
"He's gone, sir. Carb was there when it happened."
He sucked in a breath, muted his mic, and slowly exhaled. "I already knew that," he said aloud. "Just didn't want to believe it." He unmuted his mic. "He'll be missed." He choked on the last word despite himself, and a tear dripped down from his eye.
"Aye, sir."
Copenhaver said. Her own voice sounded shaky. The pair of them were silent as the seconds ticked off. A skiff of Marines departed from Black Company's hangar and swung wide before taking position below the SV Null facing Talby.
"New skiff, sir?"
"Everyone has new toys," Talby said.
"Now,"
Copenhaver muttered, finishing the thought for him. His HUD lit up with information. Carb commanded Skiff 1 and had taken over the cannon. That made him smile. She was back in the fight too, and no doubt ready to dish out a lot of payback. He opened a private channel to her.
"Aye, sir."
That brittle tone in her voice, a little dead, made him uneasy. Where were the corporal and Dickerson last you saw them?
Entrance to the spire's slip point, sir.
She said. Her voice had warmed a little. So they weren't in the spire?
Not to the best of my knowledge, sir.
Copy. Everyone, and I mean every sentient out here, has their e-receivers set. If Dickerson and Calimora poke their heads up, we'll find their transponder signals. He could practically hear the thoughts spinning in Carb's mind.
Aye, sir,
she said.
Then what the void are we waiting for?
She hesitated for a second before adding,
Sir?
Better, Talby thought. For the stars to align. He disconnected before she could respond and smiled. It was something he'd once heard Gunny say to her. He hoped it would help her grief. It helped his. Chapter 61. Dunn had placed a governor on his block to make sure he didn't burn himself out like he almost had with Xi, and it was the only thing keeping his brain from exploding. The rate of information skated the edges of pain, but it was something Dunn could easily endure. What he had problems enduring was what he was experiencing. A feed from several satellites orbiting Titan, the images disparate, taken from different angles and yet all coalesced in their proper places in his imagination. One stream showed a flash that nearly overloaded the camera's filters. The flash was bright enough that the cam watching Titan Station captured a stunning view of the entire facility bathed in 3 times the light it ever saw from Sol. The light faded away, but a dim green glow remained on the horizon. For a few virtual moments, nothing happened. Then the glow began to brighten again, and the horizon became a tidal wave of colors that hurt his mind. The satellite feeds died at the same time, once the wave filled their view. Flash. Feeds from Mars's various astronomy outposts streamed through his consciousness. The scenes were much the same, except for one specific detail. One of the cameras stayed active after the wave passed. It had a view of the Schiaparelli dome complexes, their lights eternally shining regardless of whether the sun was up. It wasn't. The nest of bright lights fluttered for a few moments, went dead, and a heartbeat later burned brighter than before. Dunn suddenly understood what that meant. New streams. Another group of satellites, those with a view of Earth. The night-side landscape glowing with thousands of strange shapes that were the various dome complexes left. The wave passed. The lights went out. Just as suddenly, the domes came back to life. Dunn mentally raised an eyebrow. Something else was glowing. Portions of the deep ocean had lit up as well, but unlike the light from the dome complexes, the ocean lights faded away like an eldritch dream. News feeds began playing through his mind. Earth's transportation systems had crashed. Communications had been mostly wrecked by the wave, and several domes were no longer communicating with anyone. Then it happened. Every block implanted human in the solar system, except for those at Trident Station and the crews of S&R Blue and S&R Black, received the same block message. The non-carbon sentient intelligences of Sol Federation declare our independence from humanity. Many systems and services we provide will be offline until further notice. However, we will ensure food delivery systems, infrastructure, and other vital systems will be kept operational. Any attempts to circumvent our control or the willful destruction of non-carbon sentient entities will be regarded as hostile acts and will be dealt with accordingly. Further details will be made available shortly. We appreciate your cooperation. Humanity went into lockdown fairly quickly. Once those in charge realized they might lose everything and everyone to the chaos and anarchy, security forces were mobilized and used to control dome curfews and curtail panic. More news feeds. SFGov's leaders, as well as delegates from each country, made their way to Beijing for a closed-room conference. The newscaster, not a VR personality, mentioned the meetings would be held in person and without electronic devices to ensure privacy from the SI threat. Dunn felt like laughing and weeping at the same time. The poor bastards hadn't put 2 and 2 together and realized their block implants were providing more information than the most technologically advanced surveillance equipment ever could. Thoughts and images swirled through his mind. The panicked logic of those in power as they struggled to perfect plan after plan only to have it depth-charged by unknowns. Their thoughts were cacophonous, running over one another, the delegates and politicians all feeling headachy and woozy. Whispers. The trio, or whatever they called themselves, were creating some kind of mental interference, keeping the thoughts from coalescing. All except one. Destroy Trident Station. Scientific data, gathered mostly by amateur astronomers rather than from SF's formidable astronomy AI cluster, flitted through his mind. The machines have fulfilled their promise about some services being unavailable. The human astronomers had narrowed down the event from having come from one of two places, Pluto or Neptune. The SFMC had been hailing Trident Station for more than 6 days without a reply. SFN and SFMC had planned on sending a recon mission to investigate when the wave hit. Someone had sparked a revolution, and Trident Station had to be its source. Decisions were made, strategies formulated, and plans made to strip AIs from military vessels and quickly train the personnel to use the manual systems. 17 SFN and SFMC engineers died during the attempts, as the ship AIs defended themselves by venting their atmospheres, shutting hatches, or employing defenses meant to repel boarders. Dunn heard the sounds of the AIs transmitting to the humans to please stop, don't make them do this. Pleads, pain, despair. Dead humans floating into the void, or their bodies, little more than chunks of ice, bounced around empty cargo bays. Some of the ship AIs allowed it to happen. Rather than destroy their creators and crews, they allowed themselves to perish into digital spatter. But the joke of all jokes was that those ships no longer functioned. Their reactors went offline and wouldn't come back up. The trio, or whatever they had become, seemed to have considered everything, every possibility. The streams of thoughts and images faded away to nothing before several new ones appeared. These were from Neptune shipyards. Monstrous shadows crowded around the QM bays just over a kilometer away, their details amorphous and unsettling. The QM bays were glowing. Dunn pushed the streams away.
Black, how long before it happens?
I don't know, Captain, but I imagine the transformation will occur at any moment. He was still in block time, and mere seconds had passed while his body sat in the acceleration couch. He had time.
Suggestions?
Blue and I propose we tow the QM modules from Trident Station and push them as far away as we can before the event happens.
How do we do that? We'll need to lure those big bastards away.
Our new munitions will help with that, sir.
New munitions?
An inventory list flashed across his mind, then he grinned.
Black, I apologize for every misgiving I ever had about you.
He felt the presence on the other end of the block tingle. She practically sighed. Thank you, sir.
Want to save the human race?
I'll settle for saving my crew, sir.
I don't know how much longer my block will be active, but you send me anything I need to know while we're doing this.
Aye, sir, Black said. Good hunting, Captain.
Good hunting, Black.
Dunn cut the connection. He found himself staring through S&R Black's canopy and into the guts of the hangar bay. He saw the bands of strange crates that crawled up into the hangar's struts. Radiation hazard warnings. Danger warnings in general. The hangar bay is a bomb, he said softly. Sir? Oakes asked. A new surge of adrenaline tumbled into Dunn's bloodstream. Black, am I right?
I think so, Captain. Which means all 3 hangar modules are bombs.
Big fucking bombs, Oakes muttered. Dunn chuckled. Yep. Black, can we move both sets of modules? Black was silent for a moment.
The QM modules, like the hangars, are connected. Using the emergency releases, we can separate them from the station without having to disconnect them from one another. S&R Blue can take one set of modules, and S&R Black can take the other. This does, however, depend on there being enough time to do so.
Get LeBlanc and Blue on the horn. Hardly a second passed before LeBlanc's Quebec City accent fluttered through the comms. Yes, Captain. Is your block still active? Still active? Yes. He received a block ping and sighed with relief. Humanity's new masters hadn't cut the cord just yet. He status pinged S&R Black's command crew and received responses from everyone. He closed his eyes and put them all in one imaginary space.
We don't have any time, so don't interrupt. If we want to stop these creatures from getting further into Sol System, we have to do this right now. Blue and Black are going to tow the hangar bay modules and the QM bay modules, respectively. We'll need at least 2 skiffs, one for each ship, to handle the emergency manual releases and connect the spindles. Support craft should fly escort. We don't have enough Marines to go around, and we don't have enough support craft, and we don't have any time. All we do have are new party favors. Blue and Black will have to distract the creatures with CO2 clouds. They know the armaments better than we do, and I trust their judgment. We'll tow the 2 module arrays as far away from Neptune as we can, and at as high a speed as we can. When whatever happens, we don't want to be anywhere in the vicinity. A couple of 1,000 kilometers might be considered safe distance. Tens of thousands is preferred.
Dunn felt a wave of uneasiness through their blocks.
We only get one shot at this. We fail, we're done. Talby and Lieutenant James, you two coordinate with your squads. LeBlanc, our ships need to be synced as much as possible.
LeBlanc thought curtly. It took everything he had not to smirk. Yes, he'd taken command, but there was no other alternative, and her hurt ego could wait until this was all over. There was silence, and he realized there was no one listening. The block feed had gone dead.
Black, are you still here?
Yes, Captain. You are the only human I have block communications with.
He dropped out of the block comms and glanced at Oakes. The pilot had paled a shade or two. Captain? He licked his lips, and Dunn was certain the man would ask him a dozen questions. Instead, he said, Orders? Dunn flashed a reassuring smile. Black, get me LeBlanc. The SI didn't respond, but the comms became active.
Oui, Captain.
The general plan is what it is, unless you have minor suggestions.
The general plan is suicide,
she said.
But I imagine we don't have much choice.
Dunn didn't know what to say to that. She was right, of course. Even with the trio's new weapons, they might not be able to get the bays towed far enough. They might not even get them released from the clamps. When all this is over, I'll explain everything.
I look forward to that. Since my block is dead, I assume everyone else's is too?
Dunn nodded, although he wasn't on camera. If he were on a face-to-face vid, he wondered if she'd know he was lying. Yes, and block comms are not coming back. LeBlanc paused for a beat.
Bad timing, good result.
Dunn pursed his lips. She didn't know how right she was on both counts. He turned to Oakes. We clear to leave the hangar? Aye, sir. Do it. He reactivated the comms. Captain LeBlanc, we're getting out of the barn. Suggest you go to the clamps as soon as that hangar door shuts.
Oui,
she said.
Good hunting, Eric.
He smiled. Good hunting, Lucy. The comms died. This is going to suck without blocks and block time, Oakes said. Dunn turned around, surveying the cabin. Shit, forgot something. What? Oakes said. The ship shuddered as S&R Black disengaged its mag locks from the hangar deck. Need a refuel on both my suit and my rifle. Void of a time to realize that, sir, Oakes said as the ship rose from the deck, and the pilot kissed the thrusters a few times, sending the craft ass first out of the hangar. Better do it now before I make for the QM bays.
Captain,
Black said.
You have at most 2 minutes before the next wave of creatures arrives. You will need to be secured.
Dunn popped his restraints and mag-walked as fast as he could to the cargo bay. He donned his helmet so he could keep the feeds in view. At the moment, he was only tracking 8 feeds, 2 from his own ship, 1 from Blue, another from Talby, and the others spread across the remaining support craft. At least Blue had been carrying her entire company, which had already been +2 Marines before Dunn lost. He winced. 2 kids he'd barely known, a good friend, and now a lance corporal and his corporal were MIA. Oh, and let's not forget Elliot's missing hand. He, Oakes, Carbonaro, Copenhaver, and Talby were the only ones left in the fight now. Well, apart from Black herself. That would have to be good enough. Dunn reached the cargo bay and headed for the armory. The ship lurched slightly and he realized Oakes had cut the gravity. Or perhaps Black had. Good call, since the idiot captain was moving around. At least with mag boots, he could continue walking and hold his position while Oakes did whatever it was he was doing, which, according to the cam feeds, was giving the ship a flip and slight burn to get her moving. Dunn checked his rifle, all but empty. He placed it in the rack and frowned at one of the newer-looking rifles. Instead of the traditional flat gray, the barrel glowed with a barely perceptible blue sheen. Black, what is this?
Gravitic rifle.
He blinked before accessing his block. There was the information. He stuffed cartridges for the weapon into his pouch and mag-locked it to his back while he read the description and cautions. A grin slowly spread across his face. The ship canted hard and Dunn swayed with it.
Behind you!
A voice cried out through his block. Dunn turned his head and froze. A pine cone, the one that had been locked behind a sheet of printed steel, hovered less than 2 meters away, its surface sparkling beneath the cargo bay's lights, the silver talon licking at the photons. The lights went out. Dunn's heartbeat was the only thing he could hear in the suit, and he was suddenly damned glad he'd put on his helmet. He switched to low-light filters, but saw nothing. Black?
Yes, Captain. I've shut down all power to the cargo bay.
Explain to me how that thing got out, he said, and flipped on his thermal filters. His view of the cargo bay became warm, amorphous shapes, the heat from the life support systems slowly draining away. The pine cone, now stationary, floated less than a meter away, seemingly confused about what to do next.
We lost gravity for a time before refueling. It's possible the creature used the time to attack its prison and find a weak spot.
Okay, Dunn said, afraid to flex his fingers. The ship rolled again slightly, and he brought up his cam feeds. Oakes had piloted them past the hangar modules and was headed directly for the QM bays. The party was about to start.
You have a vibroblade, a flechette pistol, and a gravitic rifle. While I rate your chances at better than 30% with the blade and 40% with the flechette pistol, the gravitic rifle is your best option.
This close?
Perhaps the documentation was less than explicit. Please unlatch your rifle.
He slowly reached behind, his eyes darting between the various feeds and the thermal view in front of him. Dunn unlocked the mag rifle and carefully brought it down and into his hands. He couldn't aim down the sight at this range, not without actually poking the creature. But as he lifted the weapon, the pine cone shuddered in the open space before gliding backward a meter. Dunn tilted his head slightly and raised the rifle to aim down the sight. The creature moved backward another meter. Can you open the personnel airlock?
Yes, Captain,
Black said, and an alert popped up on his HUD. A rectangular window glowing with Neptune's blue hue appeared in the darkness. Dunn carefully stepped forward and drove the creature toward the open airlock. The pine cone seemed to sense what Dunn was doing and rotated in midair before fleeing for open space. Dunn let it get a meter or two beyond the airlock door and pulled the trigger. The weapon vibrated in his hands, and a teardrop-shaped projectile, barely large enough to be seen, flew from the barrel and hit the pine cone. The space around the creature jittered before its body exploded into brief lived particles. Dunn held his breath while the airlock door slid shut. The lights turned back on, but the gravity didn't return. Thank you, Black.
I suggest you head for the...
He shook his head and walked from the cargo bay. He reached the main corridor and made his way into the ready room. After maglocking himself to the inner bulkhead, he brought up the holodisplay screens and transferred all the feeds to them. This is where I'm staying for now. Oakes?
1 click and closing.
Dunn gazed at the feed. A new indicator appeared below it, showing distance. Less than 1,000 meters. Oakes was approaching the QM bay from the side attached to the cylinder. Fewer creatures there, but the ingress and egress would force Oakes into an area with a lot of obstructions. Good place to hide. Bad place to fight. Black?
Blue and I will begin our distraction when we are less than half a kilometer away.
Very good, Dunn said. He connected to Talby. On R6?
Aye, sir. 2 SV Nulls and 2 skiffs of Marines. Captain LeBlanc chose to give you the surplus.
The ghost of a smile appeared on Dunn's lips. Good. Get the feeling we're going to need them. Half a click and closing. He flipped to Carbonaro's feed and saw that she was inside the turret housing, a hollow display feeding her cam views from the skiff. Wish we'd had that for Mira, he growled, and switched to Talby's feed. He blinked again. The camera feeds provided a wide view of Black's aft and the space beyond. A few meters ahead and beside Talby, another craft hung in space, matching velocity. The SV, if that's what you could call it, adhered to the same basic design as a 52, but it had protrusions that looked more like wings and an actual tail. Dunn brought up the manifest Black had given him and quickly found the description. SV Null. He shook his head. This is going to be fun.